preparing to stream? And we are live.
मैं नहीं लगाती है।
I'm in a webinar. Can I call you at 1:30 after?
Good afternoon, respected principals, vice principals, heads, coordinators, and lecturers. The Women Development Cell of Rizvi College of Arts, Science and Commerce welcomes you to the first webinar on domestic violence on women during COVID-19 lockdown. I, Saira Tumbi, BMM, BMMC Coordinator, Sadega Bey, Faculty of BMM, BMMC, and Dr. Malan Zardi, HOD Economics, would be hosting today's session. I would now like to invite Dr. Paul Sir, Principal of Rizvi College of Arts, Science and Commerce, to say a few words.
Good morning, everybody. At the outset, I feel sorry that the meeting could started almost 23 minutes late. I am not at home, but I am on the road now. So you can see my background, I'm standing on the road and vehicles are there. Anyway, On behalf of the Rizvi College of Education's management, Dr. Akhtar Hasan Rizvi, the president, and the director, Advocate Rubina Akhtar Hasan Rizvi, I welcome you all for this webinar. And in fact, the topic which is selected today by the organizers, the Women Development Council, is a very challenging one. Domestic violence against women during COVID-19 pandemic period. I was wondering what is this violence in the pandemic period. But then I got some clues stating that there are two types of violence taking place in the pandemic period. One is physical violence, the other one is sexual violence. Anyway, I'm not going to talk all these things in detail. We have got eminent speakers. I'm sure speakers, Professor Devata, Advocate Gayatri, and Mrs. Nandita Shah will definitely open new insights for us about the domestic violence. People are sitting at home and that leads to violence. Probably the speakers have seen or might have taken the data of the domestic violence not only in India but also abroad. I once again welcome all of you for this webinar. I thank and congratulate the Women Development Council of Rizvi College of Arts, Science and Commerce for organizing such
these
a
are the different
program.
options when you want to invest in your real estate. So the
I
property
wish you all the best. Thank you.
I would now like to invite Sadika ma'am, faculty of BMM, BA, MMC to take the webinar further.
Yeah. Now for this webinar, I'm very glad and honored to introduce the speakers for today's webinar to discuss on such a crucial topic of exigency, that is domestic violence during COVID-19 lockdown. I'll first start with the introduction of a very first speaker, Advocate Gayatri Gokhale, divorce and criminal lawyer. She's an alumni of the Government Law College, Mumbai. She's a postgraduate diploma in forensic science from St. Xavier's College. She has done a course in communication skills and speech and drama from Trinity College of London. Currently, she is a practicing criminal and divorce lawyer at Rizwan Merchant and Associate. She also has her own independent practice at Bombay High Courts, Sessions and Magistrate Courts and the Family Court. She has been instrumental in crucial cases like the Haji Ali Dargah PIL for allowing women inside the shrine. She has represented and won for the media journalist in the Malegaon blast case against gag order. She's a lawyer in the reported and sensitive cases related to Juvenile Justice Act. Her areas include body crimes, crime related to women and children, and matrimonial disputes. So it's a great honor at Rizvi to have Ms. Gokhale, who is going to give us an insight into the topic from a very legal perspective, which is important to create a society.
Hi, good afternoon. I would like to thank the host for having me here today. The newspapers, especially during this lockdown, have increased reporting cases and saying that there has been a rise in the cases of domestic violence, especially during the lockdown, and which is why today's topic becomes so relevant. Now, if you ask me, I personally believe that it's not that cases are rising. I beg to differ here. I personally feel that even before the lockdown, there were as many cases as there are today. However, at that point in time, there was an escape mechanism that was available for the victim. Escape, be it work, need support from friends, support from family, and I think most important, availability of a legal system that they could approach. Unfortunately, during the lockdown with couples and family
Gayatri
members,
ma'am,
yes,
Gayatri ma'am,
yes,
just 1 minute. Gayatri ma'am,
Yeah.
yes.
ma'am, just 1 minute.
Yeah.
I'm requesting the
Yes.
participants to please mute yourselves because there is a background noise, and please keep your video sharing off. It'll help in the technical session, please. Please keep yourselves on mute, please. Yes, Gayatri ma'am, you can take it further.
Yes. So as I was saying, I think the cases were prevalent even before the lockdown. And it's not that ever since the lockdown has started, cases have started to increase. I personally feel at that point in time, they had relief. They had an escape mechanism in the form of friends, family, distractions at work, and most important, the legal system that was available. Unfortunately, during this lockdown, when couples and family members have been locked in with each other, they have been increased in the number of fights, disagreements, and violence, which there is no escape for them. You know, they say that your house is supposed to be your safest place and your husband is supposed to be your person who's going to protect you. But unfortunately, it's exactly the opposite at times. And this lockdown has been the most difficult for those people who are facing violence at home because they have nowhere else to go to redress and for any kind of relief. Now, our society has been with domestic violence and abuse since times immemorial, but it was very invisible in the public domain. Now, it was only in the year 2005 that the Parliament enacted a very special beneficial legislation called the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act, which has given a lot of reliefs and respite to these. There is a lot of background noise. Hello. Hello.
There's a lot of disturbance in the background. Kindly mute your mic.
All right. I think that's better now.
Yes.
So yeah, I was saying that it has come to aid of so many victims all around our country. Now, when you think of domestic violence, I'm sure all you are picturing, women being beaten by their husbands, being pulled by the hair. But there's much more than what meets the eye here. Because I truly feel that bruises on the body can be healed, but scars in the mind and wounds in the heart are absolutely unrepairable. And fortunately, this very point is resonated in our law today. So our law describes domestic violence. It's a fourfold definition. It takes into account physical violence, which is of course beating, assault, anything that's likely to cause injury or what you may perceive as domestic violence to the eye. Second, you have your emotional and psychological violence, which may be anything as harsh as cheating on your partner, infidelity, or something as small as taunting your partner, making fun of her, ridiculing her in public, abusing her. The third form of violence, which is a very gruesome sort, is sexual violence, especially during the lockdown where women have nowhere to go. Husbands are forcing their wives to have forcible sex, to have unnatural sex against their wish. And unfortunately, marital rape is not a crime recognized in India. Some husbands are depriving their women of marital relations and engaging outside. That also is a form of sexual violence. And the last one, which very often goes unnoticed, but I think is prevalent in most households today, is economic violence. Because very often, not always, not in big cities, but at least in the rural areas, women are financially dependent on their husband. And when I say economic violence, I'm not talking about, making your wife starve and not giving her food. I'm saying something as simple as not allowing her to watch television during lockdown, which is the only form of entertainment, instead making her stand in the kitchen and only serve you. This amounts to economic violence. Not allowing her to enjoy facilities that are there in the house, which are enjoyed by others, by not the wife, not the victim, is called economic violence, which is present today as women have to beg and plead for money to even fulfill their basic expenses. So I think that's the most common sort of violence, especially seen during this lockdown when they have nowhere else to go. And I don't blame the husbands because even they are going through a tough time right now with the economy. Now, I believe that awareness and knowledge of the rights and reliefs. Now, in this situation, my husband is beating me, my in-laws are torturing me. What is my relief right now? Where do I go? Who do I approach? This is always a big question mark. So all I'm going to do today is answer these few questions: who, how, when, what, and where. Because I think once everyone is aware of this, it will only aid those people in suffering during this lockdown to have some respite. Because it's not always that there are social workers like Nandita ma'am who are available for everybody, because so many people are illiterate about their rights today and don't have those resources. Now, main question is, who is entitled to these reliefs that the Act provides? Now, the Act takes into account an aggrieved person. Saira, can you share the definition of aggrieved person for our audience? Because I think that's the most important to understand whether you even qualify. So, if you are a man today and you have been beaten by your wife, I'm really sorry to say this, but our law doesn't protect you. And I think that is something that really saddens me. If you read the definition, it clearly reads, an aggrieved person means any woman. So it assumes that a man cannot be a victim of violence. So once a man came to me who said, my sister-in-law is harassing me. And unfortunately, he was a paralyzed person. But you know what? I was so upset, but I had to tell him that I'm really sorry, but you cannot avail the benefits of this act. While on the other hand, that same sister-in-law, a case against her husband, false case, and even brought in this paralyzed brother-in-law. So I really feel bad about the fact that only a woman is an aggrieved person as per the act, and even our courts have not taken a otherwise opinion. It says who is or has been in a domestic relationship. So it even covers women who are going through a divorce or women who are judicially separated from their husbands, as long as they were once in a relation with the person against whom they are filing this case. Now, what is a domestic relationship? Can you just show us the definition, Saira, so that people understand the context of a domestic relationship? Now, our law has taken into account, it has been progressive, and it has said that a domestic relationship can even mean a live-in relationship. So today, even as a live-in partner, as a lady, I am entitled to claim reliefs from my live-in partner, which is often misused, unfortunately, because without the sanctity of marriage, I can get into a live-in relationship, file a DV case against my husband, against my live-in partner, and claim a sort of alimony which I could not have done in the family court, where I'm required to be a lawfully wedded wife. Under this definition, a sister, sister-in-law, a mother, any lady who is in a domestic relationship, as per the definition, in the form of adoption, marriage, or nature of marriage also, living in a joint family, can avail of the remedies under this act. Now, what is shared household? What is this shared household that the definition talks about? A shared household is any house where two people, the respondent and the aggrieved person, is living in together at any point of time. And this doesn't have to be an ownership house. It can even be a tenanted apartment. It can even belong to the person's parents, joint family. As long as you have lived in that house, it becomes a shared household and brings it within the ambit of this domestic relationship. Now you all must be wondering, but who is this respondent? Can I only file a case against my husband or my live-in partner? What if his parents are troubling me? What if his sister is troubling me? Then what happens? Because during this lockdown, many people have been locked in with in-laws, okay, with sister-in-laws, and they don't know what to do. They can't even go back to their parents' house. So what if the mother-in-law is tortured wife? Does she have a redressal against them? So as per the Act, the definition of respondent, Saira, if you may please share. Unfortunately, until the year 2016, it meant only an adult male person. So a lady, an aggrieved person, could file a case only against an adult male person. I have personally had cases of 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds torturing their parents, but the parents, not being senior citizens, had no remedy. Now in 2016, the Supreme Court struck down this word adult male person and has said anybody can become a respondent if he has been in a domestic relationship and in a shared household. And the duration is not important. So especially during this lockdown, I've had cases where the couple is living with the old parents of the husband and the wife is being tortured. So this definition takes into account temporary arrangements. So even for this period, if the aggrieved person is living with the person in a domestic relationship in the same premises, she is entitled to reliefs even against the husband's family members, even females, because only an adult male person was held to be extremely discriminatory. Now you must be wondering that at this time when you're facing all these issues, when women are going through emotional, physical, financial, economic violence, who do I go to? So the courts are closed. What do I do? Fortunately, the Supreme Court and the government at this time has given directions as there are NGOs coming into play, there are service providers, there are protection officers, there are legal services who are helplines, who are coming to the rescue of people who are facing violence in the four corners of the house. Now, the nearest police station can be approached, a protection officer who is appointed under the Act can be approached, or one can approach the magistrate, the nearest magistrate directly, even in these tough times and even otherwise. Now, these protection officers visit your house, ensure that you're safe, conduct due inquiry with the neighbors to see to it that it's not a false case. Now, unfortunately, during the lockdown, I've had a bad experience where there are not enough protection officers available. Just like doctors, they are also very scared to be frontline workers, to visit houses, inquire with neighbors, because that again is a risk to their own life. And the respondents against whom these cases are filed are not allowing these protection officers and legal aid people to enter the houses on the ground of COVID. Ki आपसे हमें infection आएगा, and are continuing to torture these women. So because of that, there are shelter homes that are being established during this lockdown, especially to ensure that these women are safe, at least during these trying times, which again is more in letter than in spirit because of all the social distancing norms. And that is one of the reasons why the cases during the lockdown, I can say, are increasing, but are left unaddressed. And the women continue to be at the receiving end of this violence. Joint families that are all living together in a small constricted space in the city of Mumbai. Now, I would also like to tell my audience that domestic violence is a continuing offense. So there is no limitation period. So if my viewers are going through this today and intend to file to claim reliefs that are provided under the Act, don't be afraid. If you're afraid of going and seeking help today, you can always do it 1 year later, 2 years later, as long as the offense is continuing. There is no limitation of filing a case. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of abuse, because I have women who come and say, I want to file a case against my husband. And I ask her that you've been living separately. And she says, yes, since the year 2008. But I still can file a case because there's no limitation. So I think there is a misuse of the law when it comes to DP being a continuing offense. Now, to tell you and enlighten you about what are your reliefs, what orders you can get from a court of law in these trying times. First order, and I think the most important order, is a protection order, which goes with the Act that you're protected. So in a protection order, a protection officer is appointed for you, and you can call up the protection officer. The protection officer is going to be your backbone. And the respondents, which again, as I described, can mean very people, are prevented from committing such offenses, abetting such offenses. And you can also get an order where the respondents are restrained from entering house, from entering your office, from entering a school if you're a child, and are even prevented from alienating your assets or your stridhan, which is the jewelry that your parents have given you at the time of marriage. And at this time during COVID, especially when you can't go out and seek help, I think protection orders are extremely important and are coming to the rescue of many of my clients, because and if they continue to do the offense, then it becomes a violation, which I will explain how it becomes punishable in itself. Second and very important is your residence order. Now, I had a case where this lady entered my client's house almost after 2 years after deserting him, 2 days before the lockdown. And then she said, "Ye mera ghar hai, main chodungi nahi." And till today, the respondents have not been able to ask her to leave, because she has come with the sole intention of entering the house during the lockdown period, and she in turn is committing domestic violence on the husband and his parents, but their hands are tied because unfortunately this law is not a gender neutral law. Now, in a residence order, many women today are thrown out of the houses. Many women are being thrown out during this lockdown with nowhere to go. Their status is as good as the status of those shelterless migrant workers, because their parents live in other cities. So at this time, I think it becomes very important to get a residence order. Now, what does this residence order mean? That you are entitled to the shared household, even if it belongs to your husband, even if it's on rent, you can get from the court restraining the respondents from throwing you out of the house. And I think during the lockdown period, where you have nowhere else to go, no hotels available, no shelter homes, social distancing, I think this relief is one of the most important relief that has protected so many women from becoming shelterless. Apart from this, you can get orders restraining him from throwing you out, restraining him from alienating the house. Tomorrow, many husbands give the house to their sisters, relinquish their rights in the house. So you can also get these type of reliefs, which is very important at this time where you have nowhere to go. And in the event that you are thrown out, or you say this, that sometimes it's very difficult for a lady to continue to live in the same house where you're going to be continuing to be the recipient and victim of violence. So in this case, you can also get an order giving you alternate accommodation in the same vicinity and providing you with the same life that you have been used to. Next, you can get a monetary order, which is basically like alimony for yourself, your child, which the court orders after considering various factors like the income of the husband, needs of the wife and the child, claims, but you cannot claim these reliefs from your in-laws. This is limited only to your husband. And you cannot claim it just to extort money or as alimony, which is only the prerogative of the family. This is in a situation of emergency when you've lost your job, your child's education fees need to be paid, then this kind of relief comes to your aid. Next is custody orders, which don't decide the rights, custody rights, which is again a prerogative of the family court, but the domestic violence court, the magistrate court, grants you temporary custody of your child. If your husband if the father is a negative influence on the child. I had a case where during the lockdown, the husband used to come, drink in the house, beat the child. So we got a restraining order, restraining the husband from interacting with the child. That did not work because there was nobody to control. It was only 3 of them living in the house. So we asked for a modification of that order, and the husband was asked to remove himself from the house so that the child's rights are protected. Now, until 2 years ago, the husband could not apply for these rights, but our Bombay High Court has been very liberal, and this is the only window where even a husband can apply for access. So during the lockdown, when one has custody of the child and one parent is living far away, I think both parents, the parent that has the physical custody is taking very bad advantage of this situation and depriving the other parent who doesn't have custody from meeting the child. So our courts have been liberal during this lockdown period, where they are passing very liberal orders granting video conferencing between the child and the parent, who doesn't have the custody, to ensure that these children get the love and attention of both parents during this time where depression and other psychological factors are playing in the child's mind, especially a child from an already broken house. So I think the law where a husband also can apply for access has really come in aid to so many fathers during the lockdown period who are living separately from their children in different cities, probably, who are conversing because of these technological platforms like FaceTime and Zoom call. They are interacting with their children, and peace of mind is maintained between all three people. Now, another very important facet, which is the most important and most widely used in the lockdown, is an interim order and an ex parte order. So an interim order is basically instant relief. You don't have to wait until the proceedings get over, which you all know take a long time, unfortunately, in India. And an ex parte relief has gone on to hold that the court can grant you an order on the same day that you approach the court without even hearing the other side, just to protect your rights. So there were many people who were being on the verge of being thrown out of the house, where the one parent used to snatch away the child, take the child away, knowing that during lockdown, it will not be possible for the other parent to reach the child or to gain shelter. That magistrates have invoked these powers and granted ex parte reliefs and interim orders to so many women and men, because as far as custody is concerned, and in-laws and sister-in-laws and just everybody who is the victim of violence, instant violence, where there's a likelihood of threat and danger to life and liberty and limb. Now, no doubt there have been some welcome developments in the law, where the definition of respondent expanded. Fathers have the right to apply for child custody, which have been very important during these trying times. However, these reliefs look really attractive when I'm narrating them. You may be thinking, oh, you can do this and that. But in their only letter, in spirit, I don't know how far it's being followed. Luckily, I can say that in ports like Bandra, Andheri, and the South districts are actively passing orders even during the lockdown period. But in other cities and other states, especially in the rural areas, there are no courts sitting, there is no access to justice, and women are being thrown out, and magistrates are not using this power that they have to grant ex parte reliefs, and they are waiting to hear the other side. They don't have the right amount of infrastructure, there's no technology, there are technical difficulties, and because of that, these reliefs are actually coming to the aid in a time like this, where actually the law had accounted, and it was a very futuristic law that was enacted. However, it's not coming to the relief of so many people today. Even during normal times and not lockdown and pandemic times, when the law says that the matter should be heard and disposed of within 60 days, I want to share that my cases of 2015 are pending till date, where no interim reliefs are also granted, even as maintenance is concerned. Now, especially during these COVID times, what is happening, and I'm getting so many calls from so many aggrieved husbands and wives, where the wives are financially dependent on the husbands for themselves as well as the children. And the husbands are taking undue advantage of this downgrade in economy by saying that we've lost our jobs and we cannot pay you anymore. So they used to survive on that monetary order that they used to get. And it's been 3 and 4 months where they've not received any money, and the children have not been able to attend online lectures because their fees are not paid. And unfortunately, even if you approach the courts, the recovery of this money becomes very difficult, because even in normal circumstances, the recovery proceedings are pending in these courts since the year 2015, sometimes running into crores of rupees, because the only way to recover it is to attach movable property. And what actually happens is, when the husband shows that he doesn't have any movable property on his name, there is no recovery, and women are just left reliefless, even though there are so many provisions in the act. So I think especially during this lockdown period, alimony and monetary orders are not being complied with, there has been violation and women are left helpless. Now, though this violation of an order, the Act takes into account that whenever there's a breach of an order, be it a monetary order, residence order, protection order, as I have explained earlier, it becomes a cognizable offense, which means that when the victim files a complaint, the police have to register an FIR, take him behind bars, grant him bail. Only then will he comply with the order. But it just looks very rosy on paper. The magistrates are either not invoking this power, especially during the lockdown period, even otherwise, or there is a misuse of the power because the law says that whatever the woman says is considered to be gospel truth, and without any inquiry, an FIR can be registered. So either it is being misused, and in genuine cases, it is not being used at all, which I think is a very sad state of affair because there is no deterrent for violation of the order, which happens in the four walls of a house and there's no evidence. So in spite of this beneficial legislation, I feel that DV is sometimes inevitable with marriage in rural areas, but they are scared to come out and file these complaints, which my co-speaker will deal with more in detail, because they have to go back and live with those same respondents who continue to torture them, sometimes torture them even more. So I have many clients telling me that, Madam, हमें नहीं करना है file क्योंकि हमें वापस घर पे ही जाना है. And especially during the lockdown, that fear has increased because, like I said, they have nowhere else to went, nowhere else to go. But in urban areas, I have seen a trend where a lot of false cases are being filed, and they are filing cases against the relatives of the husband, aged old parents, also filing criminal cases for dowry harassment, cruelty, false FIRs along with DV, trying to extort them of money. So the DV is only filed for monetary gains and implicating the parents and relatives. Why? To create pressure on the husband so that he succumbs to their exorbitant demands. So I've seen so many cases, the misuse of cases of this beneficial legislation is just on the rise, and then the genuine cases suffer due to this. So I think I have told you all the rights and reliefs that all of you are entitled to if you're victims of this violence, especially during this hard time. And I want to say that don't keep quiet, go seek help, because the law has created this for you. It is for you. And if we don't go there and ask this from them, then we're never going to get our rights that we're entitled to. At the same time, I really wish that this, our parliament takes into account the fact that we need a gender neutral law, because there are so many men who are going through so much violence today. And I also feel that there should be a separate tribunal like there is for senior citizens who only deal with these cases because they are urgent. You need ex parte orders, you need trained magistrates, and I think that's most important to deal with. So I feel that during this lockdown, being in a patriarchal society, don't forget at the same time there are men who are going through this. And if you have any further questions as far as reliefs are concerned, how the court machinery functions, how to be protected, because that's what this act is all about, I'll share my number and please feel free to contact me, because during the lockdown, this is the most worrying aspect that has really bothered everybody, because there is no relief and our house has become the most unsafe place. That's it.
It's a very informative session by Ms. Gokhale. Thank you, ma'am, for giving us a detailed insight into the topic from a legal point of view, which is the need of the hour.
I hope it has helped the audience understand what their rights are, because I think it's very important.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. Now, the second speaker we have for today's webinar is someone who's very vigorous, strong, and multifaceted personality. She is Miss Devata Patil. Miss Patil has many interesting and talented sides to her. She is a professor at Department of Communication and Journalism at the University of Mumbai. She is an assistant director for the research and technical area at Africa Asia Global Scholar Network in UK. She is a consultant at research at 3i Zone. She is a creative producer at Onjal Arts Production. Ms. Patil is also an accomplished producer. She has received great accolades all over Maharashtra for a Marathi feature film, Barayan. She has executed various market research projects for various corporates and social research for NGOs. Ms. Patil has presented and published various research papers for national and international forum. Ms. Patil, we are so honored to have you once again, and this time for making this crucial session possible for people to be more aware of, to discuss, to reflect upon the issues that need immediate attention. So we are glad to have you, ma'am. Over to you, Ms. Patil. Hello. I think we have lost connection with Patil, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. I would first thank you, Rizvi College, for organizing this wonderful seminar on this theme, which is very important. And Professor Saira, Professor Sadika, Dr. Paul, for organizing this and inviting me. And the first speaker, Gayatri, she did a wonderful job, and she's already given, set the background for me. So I don't have to, get into the definitions and the cases. Uh, the aspect which I'm going to talk about is how media visuals and imageries affect us as an audience, and how media normalizes images of DV, domestic violence, and we don't even realize that somewhere in our subconscious mind, these things affect us, and we, take these images as part of our daily routine, and we or some of us end up, conducting, getting into this domestic violence. So whenever we cases of domestic violence around us or on media, you'll see television has normalized it, and it has, brought into our daily lives every day. All these Sasbahu sagas and everything talks about or deals with, various kinds, and be social, where husband is, sometimes husband is into the domestic violence, sometimes it is the in-laws which are into the domestic violence. So there are shown on screen, on television. So when the kind of comments which we get is, how dare he did this to the women, or why is she taking this, why is she not giving it back to him, why can't she just simply leave him, those kind of narratives are seen around us, or sometimes we also end up commenting this. What I feel is it's not that easy pressure on the victim to exit. So it's not that easy. As a third person, you may just, comment that why is she not leaving? But there's a lot of family pressure, there's a lot of social pressure, the narratives that goes in our back of mind, that it'll bring bad name to my family or me. What will the society think of me? What will my friends think about me? Let these things be under, four walls, and all that, these kind of things. Or a very common stigma that generally goes with victims of domestic violence is that it's your fault mentality, where no, everything is, pinpointed to the woman mostly, that it is because of you, you must have done something wrong, and therefore, you are facing this situation. You must have not, dealt the family properly. You must not have, dealt the SAS properly, or the husband properly. So, it's your fault syndrome is a very common thing which we generally see. Now, the topic that I'm going to cover is mostly I'll be focusing on cinema, because you agree or not, but cinema has a huge impact on our day-to-day life, and the way we, shape up our perspective regarding our social surroundings. So it is undoubtedly, at least Bollywood is India's most effective messaging tool, for good and for bad. And we cannot deny the influence of it. Now, one of the images that cinema has, commonly given to us as an audience is that domestic violence is something that happens to a lower income group. Hardly you will see images which talk about, high income or socially affluent class where domestic violence is visible on screen. So it's generally, shown that lower income group people or socioeconomic due to socioeconomic frustrations, violence is a result of that. But that may not be the case, and probably Gayatri and Dr. Nandita will agree to this, that DV is is visible in every society or every socioeconomic class. So a lot of people think, Gayatri did talk about rape and marital rape. So when it comes to rape, a lot of people think that marital rape or any sexual assault is a social problem emerging from and we don't look at it as that it is emerging from a systemic, it's a systemic result. It's part of the system. There's a social problem to it. There's a cultural problem to it. Let me just give you one small example where when people smoke, there's a warning sign on the smoking packet that smoking is injurious to your health, and there are very gross images which are on the cigarette packet, which are big in size, and still you'll see people smoke. So what I feel is that when these images are mostly targeting the individual mindset, it doesn't talk about the social problem as a whole. So when the onus is put on the individual, probably we cannot deal with or we cannot find solutions to issues like domestic violence or smoking for that matter. So we need to address to a larger system, not address to
नंबर 5, जिस बच्चे को बार बार मारा पीटा जाता है, उसका टैलेंट और सलाहियत दब जाती है.
Sorry, there was some network glitch. Give me a moment. I'm sharing my screen. Yeah. So yeah, we were on cigarettes. So what is happening is we are putting a lot of
ఫస్ట్ తిన్నాక క్లాస్ అర్థమైందా అంటే ముందర పెట్టుకో ఫస్ట్ ఫోన్ తెచ్చుకొని తిను
as an individual problem rather than a social problem. So social problem, probably there will be reforms, and probably there will be turning off. Hello,
We can hear your voice,
hello,
ma'am.
am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Hello, Professor Saira. Okay,
Yes,
thank you so
ma'am.
much.
Yeah.
So what I feel is media through various images. And now when I say media, I don't mean only cinema. You can include advertising also. There are a lot of advertisements which also talk about domestic violence in a very subtle manner. Not probably the beating part of it, but the psychological and social pressure that comes as part of those advertisements. So even a detergent can't do this, or you can't support your husband because you're a woman. That also somewhere affects the psychology of the woman. So advertisements, or be it cinema, specifically in cinema, that gender violence is normalized, and it comes as part of the narrative, and you don't even realize, or the director doesn't even highlight that something wrong has happened. It comes so seamless in the popular cinema. Another issue which we need to see is that there is no counter narrative to these visuals. When domestic violence is shown, there are some films which I will be talking about where domestic violence is the center story. It's the main plot of the story. Even in those kind of films, there is no counter narrative to domestic violence, where we don't talk about remedies to for the woman which she can refer to. So gender violence is normalized in media. It is not the presence of violence, but the justification issue, because the directors justify what has happened. Now that needs to be addressed too. I will share my screen. I have some Professor Saira, can you please allow me to share my screen? I have some posters of films which I would like to discuss. Sarah, madam, can you allow me to share my screen, please?
Saira, ma'am. Now you can share the screen, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I've given you the right.
Okay. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
ma'am. I've given you the right.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
So
we can see the screen
there
now.
are a lot of films which have domestic violence as the plot, and there are some films which I have taken which don't have domestic violence as the plot, but still subtly somewhere in our subconscious mind they do. So, the film that I don't know how many of you've seen this. It's a Hollywood film, Provoked, where the plot of the film is about domestic. The film is based on a real life story of Kiranjit.
We have lost the connection with Devata, ma'am.
Okay. I'm sorry for that. I'm actually in my village. You can see that I'm sitting on a window and presenting. There is a network issue again. Okay. So where Alia is on real life from America, this thing is very common today also. People residing non-resident Indian come to India and they marry to Indian women. And when a woman who doesn't have any connections in a completely foreign land, she is psychology, for emotional, everything, and in situation she becomes very vulnerable, and the husband can take undue advantage of this. So that is very beautifully shown in this film Provoke, where battered woman syndrome, where the woman is at the receiving end of DV. And towards the end of the film, Kiranjit Ahluwalia sets her husband on fire. Loosely, I mean, this is a real story, but the climax is loosely based on 1984 film of Hollywood film, which is The Burning Bed. And that film was the most talked about film, because after that film was released, the plot of that Burning Bed was the woman, the female, was at the receiving end of domestic violence, and as a measure towards the climax, she sets her husband on fire. So after that film was released, there were a lot of cases reported about similar kind of incidents where housewives, they set their husband on fire. Whoever was, the battered woman who who were at the receiving end of domestic violence, they killed their husbands. So there were a lot of cases which were reported, and this is a real incident. So of course, the plot of the film worked also, takes that climax where Aishwarya Rai, who is at the receiving end, she, towards the end, she kills her husband. So these kind of films are very common. Now there is another narrative which we see in film is where woman is at the help a male partner is behaving badly, and she either pretends that she's dead or the husband has killed, and then she's alive, like the plot of Khoon Bhari Maang, or Agni Sakshi and Darar, where Manisha Koirala and Juhi Chawla pretend that they are dead and then they live a second life, except for Khoon Bhari Maang. But in Agni Sakshi and Darar, it was shown that the woman seeks husband, or she help of a third man. In case of Agni Sakshi, it was Jackie Shroff, and in case of Darar, it was Rishi Kapoor. So for a woman to liberate from her sufferings, she has to go back to a man. These kind of narratives can be seen in this film. Except for Khoon Bhari Maang, where she, takes the revenge. So that's another plot which is very common in film when it comes to domestic violence, where when a woman has to, free herself from the clutches of domestic violence, she has to kill her husband. A plot which was there in Provoked also, a plot which was there in Daman, Raveena Tandon's Daman, where if she has to liberate herself, we don't show that a legal measure can be taken and she goes and approaches police station, or files an FIR. She shouts out to kill the man who is so such kind of plots should not be used, is what I personally feel. Then comes a film which talks about marital rape, which Advocate Gayatri did mention. So Daman is one of the most important film which has highlighted marital rape as the core plot of the story. So we tend to see rape as a one-time isolated problem and not a systemic one. We distance ourselves from a problem and say that those perpetrators are other people and they are not those who are around us. These kind of narratives, commonly we feel that, oh, it is those people, it is them who are doing it and we don't do it. So these kind of narratives needs to be looked at. Even this film Raja Ki Aayegi Barat, where the plot is very interesting, where a man the yeah the man rapes Rani Mukherjee, and then the court decides that Rani Mukherjee and her rapist get married, so that the rapist is not is not given a legal he doesn't have to face the legal uh, fight. So this there was this very funny plot where it's very easy to it gives an image that it's very easy to commit rape, and then at the end of it, if you don't want to face the legal battle, you can just get married to a woman and you can get away with the rape. That plot. And interestingly, towards the second half of the film, Rani Mukherjee and her rapist are now on good terms, and now they share a life relationship. That I don't think so in a normal life these kind of things happen. Then there are some kind of films where woman is shown as a fighter. She does not go with the traditional way, and she's not seeking a man in her life, but she's fighting for her housemate, and she has to face a lot of issues from her family. And in case of Arth, where Pooja, Shabana Azmi, who has played the role, she's also facing domestic violence, and towards the end she leaves her husband and helps her housemaid's daughter, and she adopts that child and she lives independently. So these kind of narratives are very uncommon. Is seeking help on her own, and she is shown as a strong character. No, this is very uncommon in Bollywood. Or the case of Mrityu Dand. Again, in Mrityu Dand, Madhuri Dixit takes the help of violence, and she indulges in violence at the end of the day. Or even in case of Mehendi, it's the same plot where Rani Mukherjee is shown to be violent towards the end, and when she has to free herself from the clutches of domestic violence, she herself gets into illegal act. Then then comes Maine Pyar Kiya. I will not say that Maine Pyar Kiya had the plot of domestic violence, but I had issues with the poster of domestic violence, with the poster of Maine Pyar Kiya. If you see here, this particular thing where Salman Khan and Bhagyashri is there, and Bhagya wo uske paon pe khadi hai, and Salman Khan is standing, and this image is not romantic for me. This image somewhere gives a subtle message that women images are so common in Bollywood that we don't even realize that it is somewhere giving a message that woman is a weaker section and man is a powerful. Or in almost all love stories, talk about stalking, and initially the woman says no, and then towards the end the woman says so. Ladki ki naam mein hi haan hai kind of messages are very common in Bollywood. So Maine Pyar Kiya does not deal with DV, but I wanted to put this because of this poster. So there are a lot of cultural and family values which are shown in cinema, and because of these cultural and family values, the woman does not speak for her, and she subtly accepts all kind of violence which is done to her. So if we go back to our 80s and 70s films where Batwara, Ghar Hota Hai Aisa, Swarg Yahan, Nark Yahan, all those films where Lalita Pawar plays the Sasu, the cruel Sasu, and then there's Jade, Dingyani, and all family members who are not behaving properly with the backdoor husband, and the sister, the daughter-in-law, the bahu, towards the end somehow manages to convert the minds of her in-laws. And somebody's mic is on. Somebody's mic is on. Somebody's mic is on. Can you please unmute? Yeah, thank you so much. So those kind of films where in the 70s, late 70s and 80s, which talked about Batwara kind of films where the bahu towards the end of the film manages to convert the mindset of her in-laws. Now that is also very romantic plot where in real life it may not be so common that the bahu manages to convert the mindset, and then everything is feel good, and at the end of the film everything goes on smoothly. Then there are films like Kabir Singh where violence is glorified. I was surprised that some women, younger generation, said that we want a boyfriend whose kind of films have glorified the violence against women. Or there are some films which have glorified violence in general. But I will be specific to this film where he hits his girlfriend, and women, real life women, are happy about that fact, and they say that it's okay if Kabir Singh has hit his girlfriend, but look at the way he's so possessive about her. These kind of plots are are again dangerous plots. Then they're shown at a different level of different community, and where the daughter is shown to have liberated her mother from the clutches of domestic violence. So I feel Secret Superstar has done a fairly good job in showing the remedy. To some extent, it has also given the remedy to the domestic violence as a family. What remedies can be taken up. Or there are romantic films like Raja Hindustani, where Amir Khan is also shown as a very possessive husband, and his ego gets hurt, and then he hits Karishma Kapoor, he takes her child back, he kidnaps her child, their child, and and it is completely normalized towards the end. The last slide which talks about films is there was a film called Tash, where these were shown liberated from the clutches of domestic violence. Now, this particular film talked from a rural perspective. Then there was English to English, which did talk about domestic violence in the violence, but it was more of a psychological violence, which Sasha Shi, the female protagonist, very lovable, but somewhere in subtle manner, she was not happy with the way the family was treating her. Then comes film Hamara Dil Aapke Paas Hai, where Aishwarya Rai was raped. Now this film is different because in this film the violence is because she is raped, and then she takes shelter of Anil Kapoor, again a man, where then she takes up her family. A parallel plot in this film is that Anil Kapoor's father is is into domestic violence. He is not treating his wife properly. So there are two parallel stories in this film which talks about domestic violence, and of course the more recently the film Thappad, which I'm sure most of you must have watched. Apart from cinema, I would also like to highlight on the aspect how news media covers domestic violence. You will see that very few items you will see which talks about domestic violence. Whatever little representation of domestic violence is there, it is mostly when the act is very gruesome, when there is a very severe sexual assault, or where there is murder or a death of a person. Only in those instances this domestic violence instances are covered in news media. So that means that we have to wait for the act to be very gruesome for it. While reading about it, what the thought that came to my mind was, what if the woman journalist writes the cases of domestic violence? Will that change? And I found that most of the stories on domestic violence, print stories, were by the women. So in spite of that, why we see very few stories being covered in news media? So then when I was thinking about it, I thought that maybe one of the reasons is that there are very few women who are covering crime beat. Most of the women journalists in media are given entertainment beat. So because there are very few women who are covering crime stories, therefore there are very few stories which talk about domestic violence, because domestic violence is, as the story is covered, maybe more women covering crime beat can bring in more stories related to domestic violence in print and electronic media. So what is the angle that is covered in domestic violence stories when it comes to news media? Most of the times it is the social angle that is talked about. We rarely see cases where they are talking about the legal aspect, or in the story they are giving the legal remedies to the victims, or they are giving helpline numbers that if you are a victim of domestic violence, you have to uh, you have to seek help in on these numbers. No, this aspect where how many cases, actual domestic violence cases gets reported. I understand that it is not possible to cover every domestic violence case, but whatever little coverage comes, probably those stories should get statistics. Cases of domestic violence are there happening around us, and that may increase the intensity of the story. Not every case may be reported, but whatever little stories are reported, all statistics should be given in those stories, is what I feel. So the focus of the story, domestic violence, be it print media or electronic media, or be it cinema, in all the focus of the story is on the accused, or victim, and not on the accused. It's also one of the main factors where all domestic violence coverage focuses on the victim and not on the accused. Let me just give you a vast prostitution, and most of the or all the documentaries, audiovisual films that are based on prostitution, they talk about the prostitute, the woman, and not the client. Similar kind of problem is seen when it comes to reporting domestic violence, because we are focusing on victim and we are not focusing on the accused. So probably we need to also include the aspect of accused in print stories. News on domestic violence is often reported in a routine manner that focuses on the event and not on the context. So we rarely come across stories where the context of domestic violence is also discussed in the story. Also, what I feel is that most of the coverage on domestic violence is very event based. We in media call this coverage as episodic framing, where it comes in episodes. We don't get the coverage in thematic. Let me just explain what is episodic and thematic. Episode is something which is event based, so it comes and goes off. And thematic is where it's covered as so domestic violence stories always come as episodic stories. They note it as a thematic story and not episodic. So instances or audiences of news media have very short-term memory, and because it also gets reported in a very less manner, people tend to forget these stories, and these episodes come and go, and they don't have a long-lasting impact, or they don't give a reform kind of they don't lead to reform kind of mindset. So that is something which we need to look at. So to conclude, I would just say that news media must report the social context in which male perpetrated violence against women occurs. They should also use correct language and terminologies. You'll see that most of the time the language and terminology is also not used correctly for everything. They should avoid offering excuses for men's violence. They should avoid justifying the act from the men's point of view or from the women's point of view, if at all it is violence against the men. And they should consider how source selection shapes the story, and it should provide women with information to seek the remedies. This is what I wanted to talk about. I now request Saira ma'am to take over.
Thank you, ma'am, for providing us an interesting media perspective to gender topic. I'm glad you spoke about the subtleties of gender issues that we usually ignore when it comes to cinema, as we go with the intention of, having a good time rather than contemplating the projection of women in mass media and how it leaves a deep impact on our society. Thank you for touching upon those subtleties. Now I request the third speaker we have with us is Dr. Trupti Panchal, who is a faculty at Tata Institute of Social Sciences and is in charge of Special Cell for Women and Children. We welcome you, ma'am, to this webinar.
Thank you very much.
Ma'am, you can carry forward the
Yeah,
session.
thank you very much. So I know that I'm replacing Nandita Shah, and but since she's unable to come on to the Zoom, I have taken over. And since we have worked in very close collaboration to help women who were survivors of domestic violence during this pandemic, I thought it will be interesting for us to share this means our experiences with the esteemed audience to present today from Rizvi College. So so basically, let me begin by introducing the work which we do and how did we how do I plan to cover and respond to the issue of DV today. So the background which we come, me and Nandita both come from is looking at women's issues, and the service which you just introduced, ma'am, is called the Special Cell for Women and Children in Police Stations. So this is a scheme, especially in Maharashtra, which has become a scheme of government of Maharashtra, which there are 2 trained social workers in select locations in police offices across Maharashtra. So we have 123 locations at district levels and block levels where women who are victims of violence can reach out to and are helped in a long-term psychosocial legal support and connecting with other services like health and police and things like that. So coming from this particular service, and since I'm been associated with this service for a long time, when the lockdown happens, as you all know, that the question came that is domestic violence an essential service? And as we know that as of today, and even in spite of all our effort, we are unable to make domestic violence as an essential service on ground for women who are facing violence on a daily basis. So the first step of ours was to actually get how do we get ourselves to reach to women who are survivors of violence and struggling with their issues at home, and do they have a year to listen to them if they have violence. One very important thing when we are looking at helplines is so when right now we are before the pandemic we were doing on face-to-face services, and after the lockdown we floated certain numbers of our social workers to reach out to the society in various ways across Maharashtra, and we realized that how we could then get connected to the women so that at least they would have a number. But I always wanted to, I always know this, that something about women which we all need to know is that during the pandemic, in domestic violence cases, women are already in confinement and they are living with their perpetrators. So they are already in a very delicate environment which they are living in, or when we call it like a time bomb, living on a time bomb, because domestic violence can happen anytime and they are in close confinement with their perpetrators. Second is that women do not definitely sometimes don't own a phone. So sometimes as we know, our country, large number of people have only one phone in the household, and which might not be in the hand of the woman. So that is another reality, maybe not in Mumbai, but it's a reality of the rest of Maharashtra, definitely. So, and even in some parts of Mumbai also, in some of the ghettos. So these are the 2 important points to keep in mind. And the third is the mindset that even if there's domestic violence happening in the neighboring household, we have a tendency to ignore it and not take any action, or not go and knock on the door, not reach out to the woman. We say it's a private matter and let them handle it themselves. They are husband and wife. So the domestic violence being looked at as a private matter also stops people, and large amount of us become bystanders. So we thought it is important that to keep all these points in mind, and still we went ahead and floated a helpline. In the last 2 months, we have received 1,000. That's a huge amount of calls, but in compared to the statistics of the state, let me share with you the statistics of the state. And during the after the lockdown happened in the first month of April, there's 98% less of registration of offences. So all the laws which are still existing, but they are not being utilized. There's no FIRs on the ground. There's no protection orders on the ground. So a 98% decrease. The data which I informally got from the police station, police headquarters, and there's a drop in 53% drop in the calls which were coming to call control room. So you see that there is you can see a drastic decrease in the way in which domestic violence is being reported and being sought help for. So in spite of National Commission chairperson saying that domestic violence is increasing, which is very, very true, but actually the reporting actually gets decreased during this time. So for women to seek help, we floated a helpline to respond to domestic violence cases, and we faced many challenges. Many challenges in the terms of the couple of scenarios which emerged was that since we already were in the work of helping women who were already violated, a lot of women who were already in abusive relationships called again for seeking help. So lot many calls came which were already in where they already had sought help and they were having aggravated abuse happening at the household level. Second scenario which in this situation was that women who were in a close environment, they face the challenge of having man at home, and sometimes over a period of time of closeness for a long period of time living in the same space, there were violence on women and children. So these kind of cases also started emerging slowly, and we've also seen in our own work in the last 3 months that the domestic violence is going to a rise systematically. So this was that. So during the lockdown, what kind of cases we have received? We have received cases where women wanted to just talk about what's happening at home. Women who wanted to get out of their household because there was severe forms of violence. Women who wanted to go back to, women who wanted to report. So we've helped them to do EFIRs. There is something called as electronic FIRs you can do online. So we've helped them do that. We have rescued women out of households where there's severe violence, especially when there's violence beyond for women to take and she could not stay. There's injury, she needs medical help. We had a case where a woman was beaten so badly that her foot was fractured, and after the assessment we had to go there. So the social worker had to take the police help and go to the woman's house to rescue her out of that situation. Also, in this pandemic time, there are a lot of challenges which we face on the ground. One is that we do not have a very robust system where police is able to respond to the women because they feel that this is a soft sector, low priority. The mindset is that women need to handle this themselves. We have bigger law and order issues to be handled rather than just going into domestic violence cases. And so the big challenge on the telephonic helpline which we faced was that how do you help women to handle the situation where she is in a domestic violence situation, and how do you handle it in a much more balanced way? It might sound very unfeminist to say that we should help her to negotiate her violence and negotiate her partner, especially when a woman was in a very remote location, and to be able to calm down and keep the situation under much more control rather than to elevate it. Because sometimes in spite of all efforts, the help to reach the help to the woman was very, very difficult. And even if the woman wanted to leave the household, which we were not able to leave her because she was in the containment zone, she was in the red zone, so we could not move the woman as easily as thought we could. And also, we being essential services as social workers, we needed to persuade the police much more than usual. Also, we got calls from men who complained because helpline calls is helpline. When you set out a helpline, also men calls. Around 12% of our cases have called is also men seeking help, where they say that my wife is also a lot of conflict over gender roles because household work has increased. People do not have support. Men are not used to sharing household responsibility, and children are creating a chaos, and being at home is creating a kid and irritation in the household, which is also a lot of calls which are coming on that end, which is also escalating into sometimes violence and abuse. So this was another challenge which we faced, where we had to talk to men, negotiate with them that what they are doing is unethical, it's a crime, so they cannot be doing that. And a lot of times, according to social work ethics of it is not it's not a safe thing to talk to a woman to when on a helpline to her partner, because it can escalate the partner doesn't make the helpers call very kindly, which is majority of the time the case. So sometimes it creates an unsafe environment for women. But sometimes what women do is put us they put us on a phone, and we have to then talk to the man, and the man is listening to the counseling which we are doing to the woman to calm down or to take care of the situation. So it becomes a very very challenging space where when we are responding to the women on a helpline, because the call can be heard, the could be privacy. So first thing we do when we take a call one is for a safe number. Because sometimes when she's talking on the phone, we have seen husbands or partners abusing the woman. So it can create a lot of unrest within the social worker also, who helping out. We also help on the other end, because the violence is ongoing when the call is coming. And so how do you respond to her? How do you, sometimes there are anonymous calls, they don't want to share anything but just want to talk to you and ask for strategies as to how to combat this kind of situation at home. So these are the various scenarios, and where we get to rescue women. Some cases we had to take the conversation down, and or sometimes we had to even have a conversation with the partner and the woman together, so that they could have a peace at home. So these are the various scenarios in which we've been able to teach, and especially when we know that the patriarchal mindsets exist and issues in the household. The woman is always as a secondary person, not in all households, but yet many of the households where there is abuse and conflict aggravate. So these are the vulnerable where when women are in confinement, they become more vulnerable. So in this particular scenario, along with Akshara, the special women and children got to get some materials. My previous speaker also talked about how media is important. So one of the places then should look at responding to and collaborate with actors. I don't know whether people have seen the lockdown film which was made, Rahul Bo, Madhuri Dixit, Sachin Tendulkar, and in 3 different languages, and they actually came up with saying the state lockdown violence against women. They don't be the bystander and take police help, and don't be survivors also seek help. So those kind of things were given by all very media people who actually helped us reach to many media campaigns, run along helpline, helped us to women could seek help, and also messaging to others, women not against women. So, this was one of the strategies we used. We also very widely distributed. We also created a resource directory for violence against women quickly, and now we are also working on an app together to see how do we reach these services and with their addresses and locations to women, so that at a click of a button we are able to reach services, right? Even if you are in Gadchal or you are in Gondia or you are in Nashik, you are able to help. So this kind of a setup. Unfortunately, in the state of Maharashtra, I'm talking about that the 181 number, which is supposed to be the helpline, Chief Minister's helpline number, is being activated too late, and they are not even equipped to respond to the issues of women because it's just too new. And we need to have one number. We need to have collaborations. We need to have people who can do media campaign and advocacy, so that we can reach the maximum amount of people when we are working on the issue of domestic violence. And now with slowly the lockdown increasing, unlocking is happening. We are opening up slowly. I'm sure these are the same women who are going to help, because the relationships have been deteriorating during the 3 months of lockdown, especially when you are in abusive relationships. So this is the way we have been able to set out ourselves to to respond to this huge challenge of pandemic and my appeal to the state has been working with the state needs to open up itself to include social workers into the cadre of frontline workers already the warriors of COVID. Even these, I mean, social workers need to be made into can actually safe and secure. Also, state responsible of state helpline so that the and to be able to connect the shelter home TV
Trupti ma'am, you're on.
I think, Tripti, hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think we have lost Tripti ma'am due to the unstable internet connection. We're trying to get her back. In the meanwhile, could we proceed because we have also exceeded our time. So I would like to now call upon Dr. Marlon Zarti, who's also the head of economics department at Rizvi College of Arts, Science and Commerce. Yeah, is she back?
Yeah.
There, she's back. She's back. She's back.
Ma'am is on mute.
She's back. She's back. She's
Yes,
back.
ma'am.
Ma'am is on mute.
Saira ma'am, please unmute Trupti ma'am.
She needs to unmute herself. She needs to unmute herself. I haven't unmuted her.
Hello.
Yeah.
The host is not
She's
allowing
there.
me to myself. Yeah.
Done.
Okay. No, I've completed my presentation. I think I don't have anything more to say. I don't know where I got dropped off, but I will take it. Questions for discussion. I will take it at that point of time. We already exceeded time. Thank you. Hello.
Marlon ma'am, you may proceed with your vote of thanks.
Yeah. It's a privilege to propose vote of thanks today. I, on behalf of Rizvi College of Arts, Science and Commerce, would like to thank everyone who has helped us in organizing this webinar. The first and the foremost gratitude goes to our management, Dr. Akhtar Hassan Rizvi, the President of Rizvi Education Society, and Advocate Mrs. Rubina Akhtar Hassan Rizvi, Director of Rizvi Education Society, for supporting us in conducting this webinar. I would also like to express my gratitude to our principal, Dr. Paul Raj, for being so supportive throughout the entire process of proofreading the content and to be present here for this webinar. I sincerely thank our eminent speakers, Advocate Gayatri Gokhale, for giving insight on legal aspects of domestic violence, Ms. Trupti Javeri Panchal for giving an excellent coverage on how we can respond to domestic violence at present times, and also Mrs. Daivita Patil for demonstrating her speech on how media plays an important role in reporting domestic violence. I also extend my thanks to the organizing committee for their cooperation in organizing this event. Last but not the least, I thank all the participants for being such a wonderful audience. Thank you. Over to you, Saira ma'am.